is to draw attention to the fact that 18 to 40-year-old males are, of course, traditional military fighting age. It doesn't matter if they're outnumbered today by a superior force of grey-haired old ancient Brits. It doesn't matter at all. The only important thing is that very, very soon they will outnumber our potential indigenous defenders of my country. Right-wing hysteria, is this right-wing hysteria and right-wing paranoia? It simply isn't. People grounded in reality and knowledge understand that the history of man is war. It's the liberal left, with their naive sentimentality, who seem to think that the future of man is peace, despite all historical and empirical knowledge to the contrary. And it's always been driven, conflict has always been driven by racial, religious and tribal ambition. And we're seeing this already in Britain. 40% of British Muslims want to live under Sharia law. There are constant news items about the radicalization of young Muslim males. We saw the sickening rejoicing in British city streets, rejoicing in British city streets after the mass murder here in New York on 9/11. Constant news about thwarted terrorist attacks in Britain, and this comes on top of our own bombings in 2005. London transport bombings killed 52 people and maimed 700. Constant news about mosques selling literature, calling for the overthrow of British democracy. Constant news of calling for the murder of British Jews and British homosexuals, and for the subjugation of the non-Islamic infidel, and the desire to install a global Islamic caliphate. We see this day in, day out in our newspapers, week in, week out, year in, year out. And this is today. What are we going to see in the future, when the 18 to 40-year-old demographic is larger than ours? We only have to look around the world today to see an answer to this. One example is Lebanon. It used to be a Christian majority country, but as the Islamic demographic grew, so did their demand for control, and in 1975 this triggered a 15-year civil war, killing 10% of the population, wounding 33%, some of them for life, half of them actually for lifetime disabilities, and the entire Christian leadership was exiled, jailed or murdered. This is our future. This is maybe not yours yet, but this is my future in England. Britain's security services will not be able to hold back Islamic terrorist attacks forever. They're going on at roughly 3-4 a week right now in Britain. And I fully expect when the next one gets through, as it must eventually, that some indigenous British hothead is going to take some revenge by going out and murdering a Muslim somewhere in Britain, or by torching a mosque. And so we'll start that long progressive slide into civil war. Little tit-for-tat atrocities becoming ever more vicious, until eventually the entire country goes the way of the Lebanon or Yugoslavia, which of course fractured on racial, religious and tribal lines. The left will laugh at this, of course, some future Armageddon predicted by some right-wing Nazi lunatic somewhere. And they continue to tell us that Islam is a religion of peace. But this is just insane. Islam is not and never has been a religion of peace. It's a political, societal and structural order of supremacy and imperialism. Islam in its most fundamental form can only be compared to that of Nazism in its desire for global supremacy, women fit only for the kitchen, the bedroom, the place of prayer, Jews and homosexuals to be murdered, and everybody not of the faith to live their lives as second-class citizens. In fact, it's even worse than Nazism, because not even the most vicious of Nazis ever suggested it was all right to bury a woman up to her shoulders in sand and slowly and methodically stone her to death. Even worse than Nazism, and it's growing everywhere. What can we do about it? What I'm saying here to you tonight, I couldn't say in Britain. I would be arrested, I'd be taken away, I would have contravened various laws on hate speech, and the government in Britain is out to demonise anybody who dares raise this subject. And in the interest of short-term election cycles, the politicians refuse to talk about it. They're simply going to sweep it under the table because all they care about is the next 4 years, not the next 20 years or the next 40 years. But all this is too important to ignore because the lives of our children are dependent on what we do today. The liberal left politicians fantastically happy with all of this because it provides them, mass immigration provides them with mass votes. The conservatives, who really ought to be trying to conserve something but aren't, just refuse to talk about it. Or if they do talk about it, it's only to suggest that wouldn't it be a good idea to allow Islamic Turkey to join the European Union. This is their sole contribution to the Islamic question. There is one party that will talk about it, the British National Party, the only one. But they have been quite rightly sidelined in the eyes of decent British people because they really do have a genuine history of racial bigotry, and extraordinarily their leader is a Holocaust denier. So good, decent British people are not going to get behind this party. So this leaves just one party, which I'm going to promote to you very quickly now.